Welcome to Vodafone Firestarters. We're a traveling show. We go to festivals about music, about art, and also about technology, and that's why we're here at TEDx Amsterdam. I've got some great guests with me and a co-host, Tim de Gier. He will ask every question that I've forgotten to ask or wouldn't dare to ask. So really glad that you're here, Tim.
Thanks.
And next to him is sitting Andrew Hessel, and you want to compute life, right? And you're the founder of, and I have to check this, the first cooperative biotechnology company, the Pink Army, and you're aiming at treating every case of breast cancer individually, if I understand correctly, and we'll have a chat about that later. And here is Maarten den Braber. He's the co-founder of the Quantified Self Amsterdam. It's a global movement started by Kevin Kelly. Yeah. And well, you're basically tracking everything of yourself, and we're gonna talk about that later. And next to me is sitting Hendrik Scharve, and you're the associate professor at a university, the Aalborg University in Denmark, and you have a robot who looks exactly like you.
There is that.
Yeah, you went to Japan and you bought a robot.
That's right.
Why?
Oh, it seemed like a fun thing to do at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we find it fun as well. Yeah. We have a video of the robot, and I'd
really?
love to.
That's cool.
I'd love to see that. So if we could start that.
That video has been viewed a couple of million times on YouTube, and I think the reason is that it just triggers something. It's funny, but you also get to think about what does it really mean to be a human being? And that's essentially what we have in common here. We use technology to ponder that question in various ways. So you see here a machine, and you realize it's a machine. Well, some people only realize it during the second or third viewing. Probably that's why the numbers keep crawling. You have to see it again and check out if is this an actor or something. But you also see it's a human form. And you have to negotiate that inside your mind, and that's what this is really about.
But is it a childhood dream to have your own robot?
No, not really. But ever since I was a little boy, I wanted to understand things. I'm curious. And now I'm a scientist, which means that I spend almost all my time looking at things I don't understand at all.
And are there also women in your field?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Actually, in the field of human-robot interaction, I think there are more female scientists than male scientists there. Which makes sense, because we're not so much about the internal structure of the machine. We're really about what's going on outside the robot, in the interaction space between people and robots.
And what's striking about the interaction between a robot like that and human beings?
That's what we're trying to understand. So we predict a future where we will see many more diverse interfaces, and some of them will have bodies and faces. And we need to understand how this interaction can work properly.
And if you're in your office with your robot, do you feel alone then, or?
No, I feel quite comfortably surrounded by myself. I think of him as my as my second body. So I actually have two bodies.
Great.
Interesting thing, when we packed him up, shipped him down here first to Brussels and then here. One of my coworkers who was working at the lab sent me a message the following days that it's so empty here because of the robots. And it's not just about the physical absence of that thing. It's empty. And what she was trying to say was really that there is this presence that is no longer in the lab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can see why you're investigating this, because it's, I mean, just the fact that it feels like some sort of companion is already really interesting. So, hoping to meet your robot later today.
Oh, cool. You can see us over at the theater.
Okay. So you're all about the quantified self, Maarten. What are you tracking right now?
Tracking right now is, for example, my step count. I'm tracking my body weight.
How many steps today?
I'll have to I think the device is somewhere in my bag today
Okay.
because I had a presentation yesterday. But normally it's about 7,000, 7,500, which is interesting as the goal that the company that sells the devices sets is about 10,000. Which is
you need to
maybe
walk
somewhat
more.
high for somebody in an office job or who's not regularly running around and stuff. But it sort of keeps you motivated to try and reach that goal every day. And
Okay.
that's what a lot of these ideas, devices, technologies that I investigate are about, is actually making that loop of one time quantifying that information. But the second step, of course, is a lot of the time visualizing. So be able to see it, like the device I have is simply got a display. And then again, acting. And the acting part is, of course, the most difficult part, because seeing that you've run only or you walked only 7,500 steps a day, where you say healthy is considered 10,000,
Yeah.
does it make you change your habits
Does
just
it?
because you see the number? Well, I explained also somewhere else yesterday that some of these technologies do, some of them don't. So the number of steps is quite easy, because I sometimes reach about, well, let's say 9,000 a day, and then it's easy to make a decision. Let's go up the stairs, not take the elevator. Let's go
Right.
and bike another
Let's hit that
another round,
10,000.
and let's hit the 10,000. It's starting to be more like a game then. The body weight thing is interesting, because I can see the slope of the graph growing or going downward, but that's harder to change. And it's sort of, they stop at the step where they give you the information, and then you have to figure it out for yourself.
Right.
And then the next step, and that's also what I find most interesting, is the integration of all the parts. So there's room for platforms, technologies that enable you to feed all that information into one platform and then help you make sense out of it. In healthcare, there's been good examples of things like patients like me feed all data and information from individuals into one platform, and then see, for example, what are the common patterns between people and how were they motivated or helped to change things.
The more you walk, the less you weigh, for example.
For example, if that would be a really common indicator, and you
Yeah.
say, and there's people that are in the same situation which I can connect with, that could be an option of,
but
of
it's-
changing your habits.
We talk about the Pink Army then. What's the Pink Army doing exactly?
So the Pink Army was created because I was essentially concerned with this bottleneck we have in drug development. It takes about 15 years and somewhere over $1 billion to make a drug, and I felt that was just no longer acceptable in a world where technology is moving so quickly. And when I took a look at the bottlenecks in the process, I realized part of it is the business model. That's an aspect of it. When you're making a drug for profit, you have to deliver it as a guaranteed service. And another part was just the old idea of making one product for a large group of people, in which case you really have to worry about risk and benefit for a population. And so I thought, I'm going to change the business model in two ways. We'll start to make drugs for one person at a time, which makes sense in cancer, because every cancer is different. And two, instead of having a for-profit drug company, we'll create a cooperative, essentially a socially owned and operated drug company.
So everybody buys a little stock.
Everyone buys one share. You can
Okay.
buy more than one share, but you only get one vote. So it's actually counter-selected to do that.
So I can have 100 shares, but only one vote.
But only one vote. So
Right.
really the whole point is to sign up a lot of members and actually have them fund and operate their own drug company.
All right, and now I will ask the question: how can you treat every case individually? And then you have to explain that, and you do that probably 300 times a year, right?
Well, so what makes this possible is a change in the actual technology of developing drugs. I work in the biotech industry, and what that essentially means is we take genetic material, DNA, and we write a program. With DNA. It's actually a programming language. And when we put that program into a cell, the cell makes the output. In the current breast cancer drug that is widely used outside of chemotherapy is called Herceptin, and it's actually a biotech drug. We wrote a program that makes the drug, and that gets purified and sold. But it's becoming so inexpensive now to do biotechnology, because of the technologies that I talk about these days, synthetic biology, that we felt that we could actually do it cost effective for one person at a time.
Right.
Now the benefit of doing that is all the clinical trial architectures
for ensuring a drug is safe for a population become irrelevant. So really, the whole point of creating the cooperative was to say the system is archaic. It's not keeping up with the technology. How do we change it? How do we advance it?
All right. Now, Tim and I have been asking all the questions, but now we move on to the next round, and please feel free to ask each other questions as well. We're gonna go to the word on the street, and we've asked you all to come up with your news of the week. Could be anything, could be personal news or something from the industry, or just broad. Maarten, what have you brought?
Well, I thought about it, and I think to stay a bit close to what I'm researching is actually two things that Facebook, and that's maybe not last week, but a little time before, now enables you to track any word. So you could previously like stuff on Facebook, and now you can say I've eaten or I've run, or you can use all these verbs as part of the data you're collecting. So you're not longer only collecting stuff you like, but you're collecting stuff you've done, you've collected stuff you've went to. I think that's an interesting approach, and in the same sort of progress in this field, you see that an application a lot of people know, which is Runkeeper, which enables you to track your physical activities, has just got an investment of, I think, around 10 million. To build the platform they're already building, that they're dubbing the Facebook for physical activity.
Are you on Facebook, Henrik?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and the Geminoid has his own Facebook page as well.
Oh, okay. And what happens there?
Right now, nothing, because I'm so busy talking to you guys.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Is it actually only the upper part of the Geminoid?
No,
it's
a full body. Yeah, it's a full body.
But Facebook now tracks all the words, but it didn't before?
No, so you could, well, everybody knows the principle of the like button, I think, and it is simply enabling you. Now you can make, which I call the open graph, applications where you can define the own verb. So for example, eat can be a word. So you can make an application which lets you input what you've eaten.
Speak at a conference. You could track all your conference gigs, Andrew. Will you use this?
I don't tend to track all that much in my life because I'm constantly on the move. I think I gave one talk at Quantified Self, and it was just on the number of flights I took last year.
Which was?
77.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good
There
average.
was a lot of flights last year.
Yeah.
I am global warming.
I just heard that on the news that there's another global climate conference coming up, and the EU just published a report about, I think it's costing us 170 million that the environmental pollution is causing because of all the electricity. And then somebody said, okay, so they're going to discuss, all these people discussing it, going to fly there by plane, discuss it, and then go back again, and then add to the environmental pollution in general.
But here's the thing about that. All these information technologies have not brought us to the situation where we don't want to be face to face with people. I mean, and that's also what the robot is about, essentially, the embodied experience. There's a huge difference between seeing someone on a screen, ridiculously flat screen, and meeting that person.
Yeah.
It's the same difference between watching a football match on TV and being at the stadium, or listening to a record, or going to a concert. It's just not the same thing. So we want to actually be there. We want to meet people. I want to see you. Actually, I want to feel you right now. And this is the fundamental human experience. And all the stuff that we do with media try to emulate that somehow, and we're getting far along the way. But we'll never get rid of all the stuff. We still want our bodies there.
Isn't that a generation thing? I mean, maybe younger people care less about meeting each other in real life.
That's the thing. My children have bodies too.
Yeah, of course.
They do.
But we've known each other for quite a while now, and we meet now for the first time in real life.
But why do you do that? Why is this all of a sudden important to meet? Why are we invited here? This is because you want to be in close proximity of us. Yeah. It changes things. Really does.
And how does the robot relate to that? How does the robot show that you want to meet people in real life?
Because now I can be at two places at the same time, which is cool.
So you're actually giving a TED talk right now on the stage.
He's doing that on his own.
Okay.
It's just double billable. That's what it is.
What's your news of the week, Andrew?
News of the week. In my field, which is called synthetic biology, the big news actually happened about 2 weeks ago. There's an international competition with students. It's actually in about 30 countries now, and they compete to make the best genetic engineering construct over the summers. And they came together at MIT to present the best of their work at their world championships. And for the first time since the competition's been running, a US team won and did a fantastic job. It was the University of Washington team. They had a project called Make It or Break It, where they engineered organisms to produce diesel fuel and also produced an organism that could break down gluten. Essentially wheat proteins.
Right.
And fantastic work. State-of-the-art bioengineering done by a student team in very short time frames on a budget in the summer, and best of class in the world.
And can you take us on a little imagination what that will bring us, the diesel and the gluten?
In the first applications that we're starting to see with synthetic biology is moving into a lot of the energy space, engineering organisms to capture carbon from the air and turn it into fuels and other compounds. Polymers, we're going to be making biosynthetic plastics very soon. But in the case of the gluten enzyme, that's actually helping people digest foods that they don't normally that they may not be able to digest
because they're
naturally.
allergic for gluten.
For whatever reason, they simply can't digest it, and so this is an enzyme that they can eat as a supplement that helps break down those proteins in their body. And apparently, the work that the students did beat a product that's currently in clinical trials by the pharmaceutical industry. So really breakthrough work done by student engineers. So this is an indication that the field is advancing extremely quickly. This is essentially programming for a whole new generation of programmers that may not want to work with computers, but work with living cells.
And those are students who are coming up?
This is a student competition, and
right,
what
wow.
we've been finding is that the students are leading the way. Although they get very excellent mentorship, by the time you end up working as a professor, you know that most of your work has to be focused and on deliverables, whether it's teaching or satisfying the needs of grants. The students get a lot more time and energy to essentially go and explore the fringes of the field and push the boundaries, and they're doing an amazing job. Plus, they publish everything open source, so that everyone following in their footsteps, can really learn from their experience.
And what's your news of the week?
Oh, actually, today, right here in Amsterdam, there's the 3rd International Conference in Social Robotics, which is kind of cool. So this is where the guys hang out and discuss what's next in social robotics. So not the big, heavy industrial machines that are sealed off from human interaction, but the stuff that goes on here between people. And that's right now, actually.
Where is that?
Here. It's here at the University of Amsterdam.
And what kind of robots can we expect there?
In the future?
Yeah, or that they're already showing there or talking about?
Oh, mostly what's going on at these conferences is that people report on all kinds of experiments that they've been doing, duplicating human behavior into the robotic fields, or seeking questions for a better understanding of small pieces and bits and pieces of information related to that. What we're looking at and what we're excited about now is not really news because it hasn't happened yet, is when we can begin to bring all these fancy technologies together into really, really big and efficient robots, the way people have been doing in the car industry for many, many years. So that's going to be really exciting to see that over the next couple of years.
And the internet was growing really fast because of sex-rated movies. And I recently saw a documentary about sex robots. Yeah. Really realistic female robots, and lonely men would
male robots as well.
Male robots as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this one was focusing on female robots, but
there you go.
Maybe I should see another documentary. Are those guys working on the sex robots also part of the community, or
not this community? There's nothing actually strange or new about people using mechanical devices for recreational sex. We've been doing that for a long, long time. And for some people, that goes on into robotics. I'm not surprised to see that at all. Will we have robotic companions in the future? Sure. Yeah. Will we have human-robot marriages? No, I don't think so. Because love is about something else. It's not just about what I want, it's what I want to give. And having the urge to give yourself completely to someone who can actually be replaced sounds ridiculous to me.
Right. Cool breakdown.
So then where are the big opportunities for robots? Is it right now? I feel like it's actually mostly interesting because it's like a circus, the first human robot. But where do you expect the big relevance to it?
When the clowns come to town, you can never really tell. It is kind of a circus.
Wow.
But I mean, there are so many things around us here that have been invented by serendipity or bad luck or good luck. The first text message was, we don't want to, why bother? Why, we don't want to carry that. It was just two engineers finding, oh, you can actually use a phone, you can send text messages to each other. Well, that's kind of cool. No one's going to care. Today, we really care about those stuff. So when we seek new frontiers in our understanding of the technology, all sorts of things are coming up. And if you look at just your own household, you have tons of stuff there that with moving parts controlled by computers. Those are robots. For some of those robots in the future, they will have bodies like you and me, and they will have faces, and we need to interact with them.
So what are you going to do with your robot once you've showed it to a big audience everywhere around the world? And suddenly there will be a moment that you have to make your robot relevant, that you can actually use it for something. Where will
he's
you
been
use
relevant for a long time because he is really good at making people think about the role of technology in their life. And that's the main thing really about
So is that an awareness thing?
He's the evangelist.
No, I wouldn't really think so.
Okay.
But he does have that ability to trigger something in people's minds. And they think, whoa, if we can do that, what's going to happen to my children and their children? What kind of technological society are we going to have?
Isn't that a little disappointing? If you talk about robots, I expect really a big revolution. Robots helping us with everything in daily life. And then there is a real robot, and now we're talking about awareness. Isn't there more?
Oh, but it's actually a big revolution that's been going on for a long, long time. There are so many machines making these things. The latest 4 or 5 generation of computer chips are invented by other machines and so on. All of these things are tied together. What's new in social robotics is that we begin to realize that the robot is actually also a media. It's not just a tool anymore. So we begin to explore it in different ways. But it would be wrong to say, well, there was computing here, and there was robotics here, and there was bioengineering there. Really, all these things come together. Sensing is a big thing in robotics, obviously. So all these things converge, and that's what's going to make the future really, really exciting. But also problematic, because we need to figure out what to do with it.
Everybody should have a quantified self for their own health.
No.
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 Okay, so we all agree on that. Let's move on. No, but I'm interested to hear why you think it's not relevant for your own health.
Well, I think it's relevant, but not for everyone. It's with every technology. I started out in 2008 with the ideas that were not present in the Netherlands yet. For example, Health 2.0. Everybody was talking about this technology is going to change. Before that, everybody called it e-health or health technology.
What is it? What is health?
Well, that was a different, the difficult thing. That was to define what it actually was. Everybody was talking about some impact will come from technology on healthcare. So that was a big issue at that time. But nothing's going to change 100% if you like with the robots. You still have people. You still want to physically be there. You still want to have, for example, I had a discussion last week with somebody who said, I think everything's all right as long as we don't lose the intuition part that people bring to the game. That is something which is maybe in 100 years we'll replace something that's intuition because we can replicate brains one-on-one. But
if you make a picture of a skin rash and you send it to Google Images and it checks and it says, well, it's this kind of rash, and you're fine. I wouldn't trust that. I would still want to see a doctor and hear his opinion.
That's the interesting example that I always use that does work. That's the one that does work. Dermatology is a field which is actually better if you compute it than when you do it on intuition. They have clinical databases exactly mapping out what a rash or something looks like, and it's more easily to map that into a computer and get a result which is more accurate than a doctor just judging it and looking through a book, because that's what they in practice do, comparing it to certain types of other things they've seen before. It's clinically more efficient. 4 or 5 years ago, Philips introduced a device which could do that. It just got kicked out by the community at that point. Now they're sort of back because it's more easy. You can't keep it back because people can do it themselves. But it's really something that is one of the examples where it is
so
maybe
at some
more.
point you have a public battle between do you trust the computer or the doctor, and when it comes to dermatology, you should trust the computer.
Oh well, I think you should trust the computer if you know that you can have, in that sense, have a fallback. But for a computer, for example, you trust a thermometer to read out your temperature, and that's all right. You know, it's a piece of technology that we trust, and it's not only keeping your hand to your forehead and seeing what your temperature ought to be or will likely be.
Right.
So there's sort of a change in certain parts. The idea of the ultrasound is not so new in that sense, or it's not so. It only got introduced a couple of decades ago. Before that, we trusted completely different things. Now everybody's completely convenient with the idea of an ultrasound, that it's accurate, that it's true, that it's really like what it is. But still, for example, ultrasounds are...
But hang on, Hendrik, do you agree with that? Because you actually said probably the contrary just 5 minutes ago. We always need humans. We always need the human eye.
No, there are many things that in our lives that machines do much better, much faster than we do. But the thing here is that technology is not something we should do to replace people or to end the human life. So we're no longer needed. We should use our technologies to enhance human life, to have more fun, to have a freer and a cleaner world. That should be the objectives. So there are many things around the house and around the society that I don't want to do with my own hands. I'm perfectly happy with having machines to do all of that. What I'm saying is the human should be in the center of this.
Right.
So would you trust a computer with your skin rash? Send it to Google.
I
and
need
see
to
what
do that.
What it is.
Yeah.
And Andrew, I was a little surprised by your no, because you want to treat every individual, you want to give a special treatment, for example, breast cancer. So I could imagine if everybody tracks his own steps or everything that you could possibly track, it's easier for your pink army to get started.
Granted, it's data-centric. I think when we start moving towards personalized medicine, being able to track more data is excellent. I don't think it should be something that's absolutely required, and that's why I answered no. And then, in particular, with this type of therapeutic development, I don't think an overwhelming amount of data is what solves the problem. In fact, what I'm really doing with the cooperative is taking it back down to basics, because really we've put so much into cancer research and development over the last 40 years, and we haven't solved it. Really, I think some of the thinking is a little fundamentally off, which is really it's an infection of our body with one of our own cells. Not so different than having a bacterial infection. It's just these are not, bacteria are clonal. They're all the same. So you can have one antibiotic and it will work for all people with a particular type of infection. Cancer doesn't work that way. So really by just taking it down to the individual and working on one individual and focusing all of the science and attention that we can on one person and one cancer, I think we actually start to punch through the problem better. But that's not necessarily you have to track everything about their life and how the cancer appeared. That's actually irrelevant. Okay. You know, once you have a cancer, it has to be treated. How it arose is historical data.
But isn't it also really important to focus on discovery of cancer, because in general, the sooner it gets discovered?
In general, that's true. The sooner you can find it, the better. What we're actually running up into a challenge today is all the treatments we have are so harsh. Chemotherapies are really harsh. When you start discovering a cancer too early, you don't even know if the treatment is going to be beneficial. Maybe it will self-resolve. Not all cancers progress. So, you know, when do you decide that this is that you have to treat? Is it when the cancer is 1 millimeter? When it's larger? We don't know. Every time we get better detection, we're in new territory when it comes to treatment.
I partly agree with that, because I think that it helps track diseases maybe, and that you can signal something beforehand, and maybe it's easier to cure or to prevent serious diseases like that.
Well, it sounds helpful, so why not?
I think it should be good if everybody has a chance to track their own health. But then again, I think it can also be quite dangerous if those data are available for everybody, for insurance companies and stuff.
We definitely need to know everything about ourselves, and the more we know, the better we can anticipate on what is happening, and in the future the 3D printing will allow us to replace every part in our body. So once we know what is happening, we can take action.
Okay. The next statement. We need more robots to fix retirement issues in society.
Well, let's say yes.
Maybe.
That's not an option. I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Oh, I'm really glad that we finally got it. Why no?
We're not done.
Put it this way, robots help. You know, a washing machine is a robot, a dishwasher is a robot. I think those things help, but really, having been dealing with older parents, and in their, you know, as they get older, what I realize is it takes more human interaction, not less. I'm not going to go buy my mother an iPad. I'm going to go and spend more time literally being with her as she gets older. So I think the idea of having robots care for us is a little sad.
Right.
We see a lot of robots in healthcare and elder care, and we see more and more also in the Western world. And to some extent, that's a really, really good thing. For instance, sometimes it enables people to stay in their own homes a lot longer than they would otherwise have to do. So go off to a nursing home. I don't want to do that. I want to stay in my own home. And if technological aids can, or assisted living can provide that for me, then I'm fine with that. The problem really arises exactly like you say when we abolish the human contact. So we don't need that anymore because now you have all the machines. But if you look at an industry like the hospitals today, we have an enormous amount of technology in there. And our experience is actually not that with the rise of technology you get less time, less people time. It's actually not the experience that we have, at least not where I live. The experience that we have is that we use all this technology to get rid of some really nasty problems, to solve big medical issues, to make better diagnosis and so on and so forth. And there is still room and power in human contact and interaction, and that's really, really important. It's also part of the healing process and the dying process. Really.
Right.
Yeah.
I've read that in Japan, the government is really focusing on developing as much robots as possible for elderly people who are lonely and.
That's right.
Should they do that in
They
Denmark
talk a lot
as well?
about the aging society in Japan and the lack of active hands. One of the major problems in Japan is actually that when women have their first child, they quit working and they stay at home. So this is why they don't have so many working hands anymore. They're working in their homes. So maybe the problem is not really as big as they actually think.
Right.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't promote that in Denmark, for example?
Oh, the Japanese are doing that because it's easier apparently to make those kinds of experiments in Denmark than it is in Japan. Yeah. And actually, I'm working with Japanese researchers to do these things also in Denmark.
Is that also the reason why there are so much happening in robotics in Japan? That they just need it? Is there more happening in Japan? Because everybody always says, okay, I'm going to get my robot in Japan.
The Japanese researchers and developers are very, very good at certain things, but not all of it. And there's a lot of work going on around the globe in robotics. Recently, with the Fukushima accident, there's been a lot of debate in Japan about the fact that they didn't have any robots they could send in there to clean up the mess, because no Japanese robot has been developed to do that. So what do? They imported stuff from urban search and rescue robots from the US and similar disaster robots and military robots from Europe, because we know how to build those things. So yes, there's a lot of stuff going on in Japan, but they are definitely not alone in the field.
So it's actually culturally how we develop our robots.
Oh yeah, very much so.
So what are we developing? What's happening in Europe more than in Japan, for example?
I think in Europe right now we have a very strong focus on interaction. We have a very strong focus on what we could call participatory design, putting the human user, the end user, at the center. And thinking also about ethical issues related to all the machinery around us. Those are some of the big trends in European robotics.
I don't agree with that. No, I don't. I think that a lot of a lot of work is just for people themselves. I understand that there's a lack of people after a while, but I don't think that robots is the answer for that.
Well, you know, I'm a bit more about people than about robots. But if these things can take away some of the work for which you don't really need work, so that you free up people capacity, well, I think that could be helpful.
In general, I'm certainly very fond of robots, so yes, I think that would be a good idea, yes.
I love robots, but I think that will take a while before robots actually take over everything we do, so this is something for the future, I believe.
Next statement. Citizens should demand more from science. Should demand more from science. And it was, well, first let's do the yes or no, and then I'll elaborate on that.
No.
Yeah.
Demand more. Engage more, I'd say yes. So yeah, I'll say yes.
Okay. Because I was, we came up with
Yes.
this one because you're now taking the initiative to bring breast cancer treatment to another level, because you're basically saying that the development in treatment has been too slow so far, and now you're taking it to another level.
I've always been surprised that people don't demand more from scientific R&D. Right now, there's a massive schism between research. We support research through all sorts of initiatives, fundraising, public funds, etc. And we drive the science forward on many different fronts. But when it comes to development, actually making products out of it, that's pretty much still completely within the commercial domain. And we let the companies steer their products almost anywhere that they want. We don't demand that they make them for, you know, faster, better, cheaper, a real technology. And so this is, I'm surprised that people haven't been more militant and saying, your system isn't working for us. It's not delivering the needs that we want. It's not delivering the cures what we want. We're going to go change this. I'm surprised they're not more aggressive with their scientists and with their governments saying, this isn't working for us. Medicine's getting too expensive. Drugs are getting too expensive, and it's not working. Look at how quickly our computer technologies have been advancing relative to biotechnologies. It's completely different.
Yeah. Well, my answer was no, because I said that the engagement part is more. You can. It's like if you're not happy with your government, you can say that everything is wrong and not vote, but you have to engage more to reach more goals.
That's a built-in system, right?
Yeah. So I think demanding just doesn't work on itself if you don't add something to the system yourself. If you're just saying, I want it and I'm going to sit here and wait until it happens, then it's the wrong system in my view. And that's why I think things like participatory design, you have the same in healthcare, participatory healthcare, systems like that, but also quantified self, where you are sort of part of the system and the research. Those are more interesting ways to go to the future than just saying there's still people out there developing stuff, and we demand that they're doing it faster or better. I think initiatives like the Pink Army Cooperative are business models in that sense, which are much more interesting because they take a whole different approach in how these things are developed. And that's why I think that that it's not just demanding; it's also more of engaging in the process yourself.
But people are generally not interested in that. They just live their lives, and when they, for example, get cancer, they're interested in how to cure that. But before that, they're not gonna. They're not gonna call a local scientist to talk about it.
Well, that's. I think that's very true, and it's a difficult problem in that sense to solve. But for example, the same goes with the healthcare. You're only interested in when you're sick to get to healing, but you also see there a focus much more on preventive medicine, for example, where you teach people how it works before you get sick, not to even need the system at all. And shifts like that are actually, you can say there's a problem in how the healthcare system, for example, works, but you can also say, well, let's try and build some ways that we need it as least as possible, instead of saying that there's a problem there. Maybe we can do more before that, and so there's a shift. There's a shift there, I think.
Do you agree on that, Henrik?
Yeah, I think that people are actually demanding more from their science community, and I think it's a good thing. I'm a research director, and I spend lots of hours every week explaining to people what we do and engaging in conversation with non-scientists and with experts from other domains, seeking out new ways of doing research and doing development. And I think that's a really good thing.
And do you see more science in society that they're demanding more, or is it just your personal experience?
No, I think this is a movement. I mean, we're growingly concerned with what is actually going on rather than just thinking about really abstract ideas. We have living labs. We have stuff that's coming out of whatever you're doing, and well, you're doing it as well. Kudos for that. So it's all about taking all these ideas and the instruments to where it really matters, and this is where people live. And that's noisy, and the data are noisy, but this is how science is going to progress, and that's cool.
I don't know if that would help science to come up with more great inventions, but in general, I think citizens should be involved in the science process.
Let science go their way and they'll give, so you don't need to ask.
It is very good that there's a lot of new development in all sorts of fields, but I don't know if we should demand more than there already is.
Well, I don't know whether the most citizens know what is happening in science, so if you don't know what is happening, how can you then demand more from science? So.
All right. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, over there.
It was just touched upon like a minute ago. I was wondering, isn't the problem with the current society that we focus too much on treating the symptoms? I read like in cancer, like almost all the money is focusing on how to treat it. Well, if we would focus on the cause, there are no business models to raise just the same amount of money to focus on the cause.
So you're talking basically raising money for prevention?
Yep.
I think that's really important. And I think in general we're seeing a lot of efforts devoted towards prevention, just healthy living. This ties in with quantified self. It also, you see it with anti-smoking campaigns, for example, preventable cancers. Again, just eating clean, organic food rather than highly processed foods. This being said, there are many factors that contribute to getting cancer. It's almost, it's like if you're using a computer, a percentage of them will corrupt if you have enough computers operating. Cells are basically little chemical computers, and genomes will corrupt over time. So once you have a cancer, then you have to focus on treating it. And what has been such a concern for me is we haven't advanced the chemotherapies so that they're specific and non-toxic fast enough. But once, again, prevention is good, but once you've got a cancer, you have to treat. You know, all the preventative focus is gone. And even if you live a completely clean life, a percentage of people will still end up getting cancer.
Do you consider it a problem that it's profitable or interesting for a big group of companies to focus on making money, and it's more difficult to make money by preventing?
I think that's part of it. Remember, pharmaceutical companies sell products, and if a person doesn't have a disease, they have nothing to sell to. Now, some of them are changing that, but that's not necessarily the pharma companies. It's the overall health communities, insurance companies, and other groups that are directly that are upstream of pharma. This being said, once you have a cancer, you essentially are going to be in that space for a long time. Right now, we treat it as an acute problem. Maybe we have to start thinking how we treat it over a lifetime to maintain almost a subscription basis to maintaining our bodies cancer-free.
Thank you.
Okay. There's another question over there. Microphone there, camera arrived, good to go.
Actually, this is a question for Dr. Scharfer, for Gemini. When I heard you talking, I actually had a bit of a flashback of the movie I, Robot with Will Smith, and I believe it's from Spielberg, and it was actually a doom scenario. So in which way is then your endeavor actually a positive outlook on the future of robots?
Good question, thank you. That's a great movie. And it's 10 years old, and it's just been celebrated by a bunch of guys in science fiction and in robotics around the world, basically. One of the central themes of that movie is, can human beings be replaced? And should we replace human beings? Ever since antiquity, we have had this dream about building artificial persons around us. I think in part to better understand who we actually are. Spielberg's answer is, nah, there are some problems here. And my answer would be the same. There are some problems here. It's not, for me, it's not about replacing the human being. It's about better understanding who we are. And the machines will help us to do that. Same as if we're going to solve those big questions that my colleagues here are working on, we depend on technology to do that. We are not going to solve the energy problems of the world without technology. We're not going to learn much new about ourselves inside or outside without technology. So my contribution to that is a very small one, but it's one I believe in. And it's one I can do now.
But is there a danger? What would be a moral challenge, for example? What is one of those problems that's arising in robotics?
Well, it's very easy to envision situations where the use of robots can be unethical. For instance, you could have robotic toys running around in children wards at hospitals, entertaining children, while at the same time gathering information about them. The unwilling, unconsentive use of sensors. Is that ethical? Suppose you are father of a child and that child dies. We replace your child with a robot. It's the AI scenario. Is that ethical? Will it keep you locked in your sorrow, or will it help you move on? It's easy to see usage of these technologies that are deeply questionable. So right now I'm not saying you should not do that or you should do that. I'm saying think about what you want.
But that's so far away. Are
no,
there also problems closer by? No, it's
not.
not.
Yeah, sure, but yeah.
It's not far away.
No, it's not far away.
What?
Okay. Well, with that maybe comforting or not so comforting thought, we'll move on to the last question from the audience.
Yeah, to get back to the subject of citizens engaging in science, don't you think that science in general needs better PR? Because I think people in general think that, you know, these bunch of guys are doing stuff in the lab and, you know, they can't really relate to it. Do you agree?
I certainly agree. I find most scientists have difficulty communicating with the public. They use a lot of jargon. They sometimes have trouble making their what they're passionate about and what they're so good at relevant to everyday life. And so I would love to see more scientific communicators.
Well, we need more bands who have the same name as scientific initiatives
Exactly.
because it worked.
Exactly.
I think also a lot of already is happening. For example, do-it-yourself bio or Fab Labs or hackerspaces. People get to be more engaged with the current status of science. Science is more approachable, I think, also than it was. I remember playing with transistors and building your own radio and doing that kind of stuff, and that was niche then. But I'm getting the feeling, at least, that there's a bigger community now growing around these do-it-yourself sort of science approaches, which I think is part of a good PR. It's
we need a more Lego approach to Lego approach.
Yeah, Lego is also a way of playing around with technical things in the end, and I think it's helping. I think if there's probably research claiming that Lego has helped people get interested in technology, for example. At least I know for myself, but that works very well, and it's now in more fields, and that's so interesting to see. You can do really biotech stuff in your garage, and that is actually really something which you can buy for a couple of $100 or even less, and experiment with, and that is something which wasn't around 10, 20 years ago.
All right. Well, so there's a message for the audience. Please get yourself a biotech lab or just buy some Lego. And thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for coming out here and talking about your expertise. And well, this was Vodafone Firestarters at TEDx Amsterdam. Stay geeky.